The atmosphere in the WWE was nothing short of electric, but beneath that surface, a volatile storm had been brewing for months, perhaps even years. On what was expected to be another thrilling episode of SmackDown, a moment unfolded that sent a shockwave not just through the arena, but across the entire WWE Universe. The fans, accustomed to shocking betrayals and last-minute twists, were still completely unprepared for the seismic rupture that occurred right in the center of the ring. Paul Heyman, the cunning mastermind long known for his genius-level intellect and unparalleled ability to manipulate the chessboard of WWE politics, found himself in the eye of a hurricane he could no longer control. The man who once stood beside Roman Reigns as his closest advisor, his wise man, was left speechless, humiliated, and physically dismantled at the hands of someone he had once considered an ally, if not family. Jey Uso, long the quiet and loyal enforcer of the Bloodline, finally reached the point of no return. After years of obedience, sacrifice, and subjugation under the immense shadow cast by Roman Reigns and orchestrated by Heyman, Jey exploded in a moment of raw, unfiltered emotional catharsis. It wasn't just an attack. It wasn't a heel turn. It wasn't even a revenge plot executed for spectacle. It was the eruption of years of bottled-up anguish, betrayal, and identity loss, culminating in one of the most intense confrontations SmackDown has ever seen. Standing in the middle of the ring, surrounded by thousands of stunned fans and millions more watching at home, Jey's voice broke through the silence like a thunderclap. There were no elaborate promos or over-the-top taunts, just 4 words that shattered everything that had been built. "You broke the family." Those words carried more impact than any superkick or steel chair ever could. They weren't scripted lines fed into an earpiece. They came from a place of truth, at least the truth as Jey Uso saw it. Heyman, always quick with a retort, always the smartest man in the room, suddenly looked lost. Gone was the confident advocate who had played mind games with legends and future Hall of Famers. In his place stood a man who had underestimated the human toll of his own machinations. Paul Heyman, who had built the Roman Empire brick by manipulative brick, who had orchestrated title defenses with clinical precision, who had turned the Bloodline into an untouchable dynasty, now found himself staring into the face of the monster he helped create. Only this monster was righteous, vengeful, and utterly fed up with being used. For years, the Bloodline stood as WWE's ultimate symbol of power, unity, and ruthlessness. Roman Reigns, under Heyman's careful tutelage, was transformed from a controversial babyface into the most dominant and feared champion in modern WWE history. With the Universal Championship wrapped tightly around his waist and his cousins by his side, Roman's reign as the tribal chief seemed invincible. Every match was a statement. Every promo was a declaration of superiority. And at the core of that image was Paul Heyman, the puppet master who made sure that every piece moved exactly as it should. But the truth is, empires don't collapse in a day, they rot from within. Jey Uso had always been the loyal foot soldier, the one who stepped up when others backed down, the one who put family above self time and time again. He relinquished his individuality, allowed his bond with his twin brother Jimmy to take a back seat, and submitted his own ambitions to the greater cause of Roman's vision. It was a choice that cost him more than just opportunities, it cost him identity. Week after week, match after match, Jey played his role. But even the most loyal soldier has a breaking point, and when he reached his, it wasn't with a whisper. It was with a roar that shook the entire foundation of WWE. The confrontation with Heyman wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. Jey didn't swing first. He stared into Heyman's eyes and forced him to reckon with the consequences of his deception. The man who always claimed he was acting in the best interests of the family had finally been called out. And when Heyman failed to offer a defense, when he just stood there, slack-jawed and trembling, Jey delivered the only message left to send. A beating so thorough, so personal, that even seasoned fans were left in awe. The image of Paul Heyman, lying broken in the middle of the ring, is one that will linger in WWE history forever. Gone was the smug smirk, the well-articulated rebuttals, the calm confidence. What remained was a man physically punished and emotionally unmasked. For all the years Heyman had played the game better than anyone else, in that moment he lost control. The wise man, the voice of reason and ruthlessness behind Roman Reigns' unmatched title reign, had no plan, no exit strategy,
No reinforcements.
and the WWE Universe watched, enthralled and horrified, as the Bloodline's very soul was ripped apart, and just when it seemed the night couldn't get any more chaotic, a familiar and fearsome shadow emerged. Brock Lesnar, the Beast incarnate, was seen backstage, not storming the ring, not issuing a challenge, but lurking, watching, waiting. His presence alone was enough to send a ripple of panic and speculation throughout the fanbase. Lesnar's history with Heyman is as twisted and complex as any storyline in WWE lore. Friends turned enemies turned reluctant allies. Their dynamic has been built on destruction, dominance, and uneasy respect. Lesnar doesn't show up without a reason. The question is, was he there to destroy what remained of Heyman, to pick the bones of a weakened bloodline, or to offer unexpected assistance? The air was thick with speculation, tension, and the kind of unscripted magic that WWE rarely captures so vividly. As Lesnar's silhouette disappeared into the shadows, one thing was clear. His reemergence was no coincidence. He smelled blood in the water. Roman's fortress had been breached, his inner circle crumbling, and his trusted advisor decimated. Lesnar thrives in chaos, and the Bloodline saga had just provided the perfect storm for him to reinsert himself into the narrative in the most devastating way possible. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns remained noticeably absent. No post-show promos.
No cryptic social media teasers. No backstage interviews.
Silence. For a man who had always projected strength and certainty, Roman's absence was deafening. In past times, a threat to the Bloodline would be met swiftly and with overwhelming force. But now, with his consigliere broken and his most loyal lieutenant rebelling, Roman had no clear path forward. Was he regrouping? Was he unsure? Or worse, was he afraid? Because make no mistake, the collapse of the Bloodline wasn't just symbolic. It was literal. The trust that once bound this faction together had been obliterated. The cracks that had been forming over time, whether through Jimmy's earlier doubts, Sami Zayn's betrayal, or Jey's internal conflict, had widened into irreparable chasms. What was once the most airtight group in WWE now looked like scattered fragments of a fallen dynasty. And Jey Uso, so long a sidekick, was finally standing in the spotlight alone. Not as part of a tag team, not as Roman's proxy, but as a man who had taken back his agency with explosive force. The question now becomes, where does he go from here? Could this be the beginning of a true main event singles run? Is he ready to step into the void left by Roman's wavering grip? The crowd seems to think so. Their cheers weren't just for the beatdown. They were for Jey reclaiming his place, for finally shedding the chains of a loyalty that had only brought him pain. For Paul Heyman, the path forward is even murkier. Known for always being 3 steps ahead, for weaving complex narratives behind the scenes, the wise man now finds himself without allies, without protection, and perhaps, most crushingly, without purpose. Was his betrayal premeditated? A desperate act to preserve himself as the Bloodline fell apart? Or did he simply miscalculate, for once allowing emotion or fear to guide a move that backfired catastrophically? With his reputation in shambles, his body bruised, and no clear allies left in the locker room, Heyman is entering uncharted territory. And yet, history teaches us never to count Paul Heyman out. This is a man who has risen from ashes time and again, who has turned ruin into opportunity more than once. Is it possible this is all part of a longer, more elaborate scheme? Could Heyman have planted the seeds of this chaos long ago, anticipating Roman's fall and preparing a new regime in its place? Or is this truly the end of the line for the greatest manipulator WWE has ever known? The presence of Brock Lesnar only deepens the mystery. His motives are never clear until it's too late. With Roman's regime faltering, is Lesnar here to challenge for the throne once more? Or has he seen in Heyman a man finally vulnerable enough to finish off? Could we see an alliance between Lesnar and Jey, built on mutual hatred for Roman and Heyman? The possibilities are endless and tantalizing. And perhaps that's what makes this moment so extraordinary. It's more than a twist in a storyline. It's a transformation, The very foundation of WWE has been rocked. The era of the Bloodline, which has dominated headlines and main events for years, has fractured. Whether it completely crumbles or reinvents itself is yet to be seen. But what's clear is that nothing will ever be the same again. The WWE Universe, always hungry for moments that feel real, that feel consequential, has been given something unforgettable. The saga of the Bloodline has always had an epic, Shakespearean quality. Loyalty, power, betrayal, downfall. And now, we've reached the act where the kingdom begins to fall apart. The audience can feel it. The wrestlers know it. And as